about it about a year ago, and felt like if I was a high school coach or any kind of coach, what would I want to hear? And I'd love to listen to you know, the guys that are on the stage right here. And so here we are tonight, and certainly nobody better to moderate it than Kirk Herbstreit. So Kirk, let's get started.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, have you guys ever been together on a stage like this? No. First time? First time. No? First time. How about that? Coach Coop, I know you come back quite a bit to the Woody Hayes. You guys come back into this environment. What kind of memories come back? What kind of thoughts come back?
I still live here. They can't run me out there, guys. How I've been here for 30 years. I haven't lost a game for 22 years, you know. I live 5 minutes from here. I come over here. The coach is great. Watch practice. Watch, you know, the whole of practice or half of practice. And go through, get me some lunch, go home and play golf. not a bad life.
Tressel, what's it like for you when you come back here?
Well, you know, I tell you what, it's special just because of the memories. When you think about the kids that you worked with here, and you guys got like Hardline, and you know, all of a sudden now he's, you know, offensive coordinator, and I don't know if Ryan's going to let him call any plays, but he's the offensive coordinator. Oh yeah, you're going to throw every down though, just so you know. But you know, I'm so proud of guys like Ryan and James Laurinaitis back here, and C.J. Barnett, and those guys, and you know, you just think about how blessed you were to be the head football coach at the Ohio State University, and a special place to all of us, guys that grew up in Ohio especially. My dad was a freshman football player here in 1943, and enlisted in World War II so that we could be free today to play this great game, and so nothing more special than being back here.
I was hired here in 1986 as a grad student, and Woody Hayes was still alive, and Earl Bruce was the head coach, and I got to know Tress, and then I was here when Coach Coop took over, and so what I've always told people about Ohio State is it's very unique. I've been around the world a little bit, and every coach cares for one another in this organization. You know, it's really cool to see that, where when I became the head coach, I heard from Jim, I heard from Coop, obviously Earl Bruce was still alive. And it's the same way now with Ryan Day. When you hear about the brotherhood, it's very unique. And so when you say, Kirk, when you walk in here, what do I think of? I think of that picture right up there when we beat Alabama. But I don't just see the score. I see Mike Thomas. I see some of those great players. And the memories, it's almost, I can't remember my address, but I remember every play of that game. And that's what I remember. That's what I feel when I walk around, see the pictures and the players' faces and the moments. Great.
I want to ask you, we're all so proud of what you guys do in the history and the tradition going way, way back, even before you guys were coaches. But you guys have been in other places, and you think about other states. What makes Ohio high school football what it is? And what do you think separates it from some of the other great states? Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, Texas. What separates what these guys do and the tradition of it?
You know, I'll jump in there on that one because I really think, having been in Ohio for so long, you look at the communities, and most of us were immigrant communities because we were an industrial state, whether we were a steel town, a rubber town, a glass town, you know, whatever we were. And people came from all over the world, and that community became everything. And the high school football team in the community became everything. And if you think about why is Ohio State perennially always good, it's because of extraordinary high school coaching. And I would end with Paul Brown going from an Ohio high school coach to the Ohio State coach and taking the program to the next level, winning our first national championship and all those things. It's all because of them.
I played high school football here. My son, one of the greatest moments I had was when my son jogged on the field here at Bishop Watterson and played high school football, because I knew we would get great coaching. And I've spoke on this many times, that throughout the country, cultures, football are because of the patriarchs, because of the great legends of coaching. And I grew up in the 70s where something called a 10-year war. It was Bo Schembecker against Woody Hayes. I still feel that in Midwest, in the state up north, here in Ohio, if you want to find a tough player, go to the state of Ohio. And when did that start? In my very strong opinion, is back when a guy named Woody Hayes had, probably before that, but the generation I knew, when you want to go watch a good, tough-ass practice, go to Ohio. When you want to see someone run the ball down someone's throat, where do you go? You go to the state of Ohio. You see big-ass, banged-up linemen, where do you go? You go to Ohio. So that's what I think of, and that's what I attribute to these coaches here.
Not me, I think of Minnesota.
You better have a good president, you better have a good athletic record. It isn't how good you are, it's how good you are compared to who you're playing, right? You got to get kids to school, but the great thing about the Ohio State University, we're located right in the middle of the state, 65,000 students. You can make a big school small, but you can't make a small school big. Football player can get an education, get a degree in anything here at Ohio State. You got to make them go to class, you got to get them good tutoring, you got to keep them eligible. But I've coached all over. I coached at Oregon State, UCLA, Kansas, and Kentucky, and Tulsa, and Arizona State here. This can be and is one of the top 5 coaches in college football. It can be number 1. And you guys are doing a great job, and thanks for everything you did to help me when I coached. I lasted 13 years here, you know.
And I would just say, just as for me coming in and just seeing, the current state of high school football here in Ohio, the thing that just jumps out to me is the camaraderie within the state. You just feel it here. There's a sense of pride. And I think, Coach just mentioned it, the discipline, the toughness, and the pride of their program, the pride of Ohio football. And I think when you go to other states to recruit and you walk into their schools, I mean, they sit up straight because they know that they played some of the great programs in the state of Ohio over the past few years. And every time they play, they're going to get hit in the mouth. And so that has not changed in a long time.
Coach Coop kind of started to go down this path, but you mentioned you guys have been in other places. What makes Ohio State, through these guys' eyes and lens, what makes Ohio State special and unique in comparison to some of the other great places that are out there?
Well, I think first of all, you got good talent, and you got good coaches, and I think if you're not doing it, you ought to get your fanny over here and watch what Ohio State's doing. I mean, football changes every year. I grew up, it was a single wing, wide tackle 6, and then it was the option, and it was an Okie defense, and then it was option plays, and it was cover 2, Tampa 2, right? Now it's a spread. If I was coaching right now, there wouldn't be no question. I'd run the spread, I'd line that wide up like Tennessee's doing, about a yard from out here. And if you're playing the man coverage, I'm going to throw it to Harrison. Pretty easy to call plays, though. And you know what? I'm going to beat your ass if you ain't covered. Right?
One of the things, Kirk, I think that makes this place special is that there's no question throughout the entire state who the school is. Youngstown State's very important in that region. Bowling Green's very important in that region. Cincinnati in that region. Whatever. But you can be a Youngstown State fan, but your team is the Buckeyes. And I think that's a tremendous advantage we have. Just you have every corner of the state, every high school they're in. Those people there love the Buckeyes, and there's an agreement. There's never a discussion in our entire state and all of our coaches, and I know there's some coaches from outside the state here, and I don't know where the guy from Lawrence Tech is, one of my college classmates is his mentor, but anyway, there's total agreement that Ohio State is the school.
In 2012, when I was hired as a coach, this tells you how special Ohio State is. I always believed that. I was here as a grad student. And the NCAA, I don't know if you ever heard the story, but I hire a guy from the NCAA, and I said, let me know what's going to happen, because it was nonsense. I can say that publicly now, because it was nonsense what went on with Coach Tressel and all that to give a penalty like that. So I hired a guy, and I said, what's the chance of us losing a bowl game and losing scholarships? And they came back. Our president at the time was Gordon Gee and Gene Smith, and they came back and said, precedent shows it's nothing. It's going to be probation, because if you take over a program when you lose a bowl game and you lose players, that's usually a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year rebuild that nowadays you don't have that. And so I took the job. 2 weeks later, Gene Smith calls me and says, "You in your office?" "Yeah." He comes over and he says, "You better sit down." I go, "Uh-oh, what happened?" And he said, "They just took a bowl game and they took 9 scholarships from us." And my original thought was, I didn't sign up for this. And then I said, "You know what, Gene, let's go, let's do this." So I called our seniors in, and the rules said that you could leave without punishment back then. They didn't have transfer portal, but every one of those seniors could have left. Great group of seniors that Coach Tressel recruited. I sat down with the seniors. You know how many transferred? How many? Think about what I just said. And why? Not because of me, not because of that, but because of Columbus, Ohio, because of The Ohio State University, because of something that we call the Brotherhood. That was John Simon and Zach Moore, and that, in my opinion, every program does this at some point. It does, except one, Ohio State. That was the year it could have went like that. If it wasn't for Zach Moore and John Simon, Sabino, and Shazier, those players that we had, because they were going to leave. And you know, I told Ryan that there's a wall. I said, please don't ever take that wall down. That 2012 team kept Ohio State afloat when it could have went like this.
How about the things that you've been in other places? What makes Ohio State special?
Well, I mean, it's what the coaches talked about, but it's more like no matter where you go in the country, there's just such pride. It doesn't matter, you know, there's whether it's 2, 3, 4 generations. There's so many great stories of my grandparents who, you know, watched every single game, and people are grabbing you and just telling you stories about how, you know, my grandfather played for Woody Hayes, or I have never missed a home football game in 50 years. It's just amazing to me how it's the identity of so many people in this state.
I want to get into these guys' motivation of a team and a player. When you guys were coaching, how'd you go about selecting captains for your team?
I let my team vote. If they voted, the guy they voted for was my captain. I didn't appoint captains. I want the captain is in that locker room all the time. And every time we finished practice, our coaches came through that locker room and talked. If you got a guy you're chewing out on the practice field, don't let him go home by himself. Go in and visit with him. Solve your problem. Leadership. That's what you're looking for, in my opinion. But I let them vote. I didn't force it myself. I let them pick the team. And we only had 3, I think it was. I don't like 8 captains or 10 captains. I like 2 or 3 captains. Well, it used to be 1 on offense, 1 on defense. Okay? You work by captain, 1 on. Yeah. How about you?
We have the players vote, and I'm a little bit different than Coach Coop. So we would get the results, and they weren't public. They weren't, you know, on ESPN or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And then really based upon which of those 3 guys, maybe 4, that we thought, we kind of felt like we get a little vote, and our vote was how many? And but you know, you definitely have to have your players.
Coach Tressel, what if you had a guy who was high up there and maybe you didn't think he was a captain type of guy? Did that ever happen?
I can't recall it. It may have at the moment where you thought, you know what, we're going to have to work with this guy to understand what's the responsibility that you now have been selected to do. But that's a great lesson for that kind of person, who obviously is a great player, but we've recognized that they need to mature.
I had that happen out here. That's tough. Because that rips your heart out a little bit, like you start questioning the team. But I did a little bit different than Coop. Same philosophy you vote on. I think it's one of the greatest honors that you can have. My 3 children were captains in high school, and to this day I tell them that's the greatest thing, that you, especially if it's voted upon your peers. We actually put a wall, because I think every captain at Ohio State is legendary. Your name should be on this building. It's right down the corner. I hope it's still there, but it's right there, because every captain at Ohio State is different. So we started doing the 6, 7, even 8 at times, because when you see these kids get votes and there's 2 behind another guy, and once you get that name, captain of the Ohio State football team, in my opinion, that changes your world. You become more hireable in the corporate America. You walk in, say, I'm Kirk Herbstreit, I was a captain at the Ohio State University. You kind of move to the front of the line. Come here, tell me about that. So I didn't want to limit it to 1, 2, 3 guys. So we went, I think there was probably 8 once or twice because I had 8 great leaders. What are you going to call them in and say, you're not one? When, Mike Grable, I remember telling me one time, he was not a captain. Mike Grable. It's just because there weren't no captains, because he certainly was a leader. I asked him about that. He said, I didn't have the title, but I took the title in the locker room. So.
Just to add one thing to his point, how important that being a captain is. I know when I was a freshman in college at Baldwin Wallace, we had 109 freshmen. 68 of them were captains of their high school team, and that was consciously recruited. That's what the coaches wanted. They wanted the captain of their team because they knew these guys would have given them extra responsibility, they would have grown, and same thing in the corporate world.
And it's the same thing in recruiting. I mean, that's one of the questions you ask. If somebody isn't a captain of their high school program, you don't know why, because there's a reason why. But the thing that you brought up about having captains that maybe you felt like weren't the right fit was an issue that we had. And so we thought long and hard about that, Coach Mick and I. And so what we ended up doing was we actually made some selections of a leadership of 24 guys on the team. What we did is we brought them into the locker room, and that was, or into the team room, that was in February. And we taught them what leadership was. I don't think a lot of guys understood what leadership is. You know, today people throw out a lot of comments, and so we taught them what it was. And then if you want to be a leader, come into the weight room, sign up, and then everyone voted. We went through, we built squads, we had a draft, and then after the spring gets done, just like we're doing now, we'll re-vote. We'll go through a whole summer, and then by the time we get to the summer, some of the guys that maybe were voted on early on, they weren't there anymore. So we'd already gone through the process of kind of vetting some of the leaders, put them in conflict, and we found out that our leaders were much stronger and our captains were much better. Yeah.
I talked about it a little bit earlier when I said that these guys, even though NIL, I don't know if Ohio has NIL, I can't remember if Ohio has it or not, but you see the individuality in high school football. You see the offers, you see the specialized, they're going to different camps and trying to get that individual attention to be able to get offers and try to get to the NFL. And when you guys all coached, everybody was trying to get to the NFL, but it just feels different now, the individuality compared to maybe what it used to be. And I think it's been amped up in the last couple of years, just especially for you three, because he lives it every day. Your thoughts on high school football, individuality? How do you get your arms around that as a coach? How do you maintain team? How do you maintain team goals and still allow them to have individual goals, but make the team the focus and not the individual?
I think really it hasn't changed. I know with all these guys, what's most important and people ask us what we're most proud of is we're most proud of our guys when they're 40 and we see them and what kind of men they became, what kind of fathers, what kind of professionals and so forth. And we want to win, we need to win and all those kinds of things. And so I don't think you can lose sight of what you're trying to do. And there's just a different set of rules of engagement right now. But it can't overtake. Our country needs kids who have played high school football. We talk to business and industry all the time. They say, we don't have a workforce and we don't have people who want to work. Well, football players know how to work. And so I don't think it's changed. We have the same values that we're trying to teach and the same outcomes we're trying to get. It's just that there's so much glow on whether or not you were a star or we're going to pay you a little money or you won. But really at the end of the day, the guys that weren't national champions that went here to Ohio State still had amazing things come true, and when they come back here, they're just as proud as the ones that were national champions.
I really struggle with the individuality I always have. I'm like Tress, I'm not sure it's that much different. What difference is the world we're in? It's called social media, it's called all the nonsense that, kids are kids in my opinion. I dealt with that in Bowling Green in 2001. Kids are kids. What do kids need? Discipline. Now it's instead of in a locker room or on the practice field, it's on how many, you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And I start thinking, wait, I dealt with that, but not on the national. So I think kids are kids, what do kids need? It's why they call them kids. They need coaching, they need discipline, they need parents, they need teachers, they need people in their life to say, this is right, this is wrong, and this is our expectations. I think his seat is more difficult than any seat that we ever sat in because everything is on every team meeting also. I remember my first couple of team meetings here, I had to find out who it was on nationals, I'd walk out and say, how'd that happen? We had to find out who that was. In the old days, that never really happened. What you see in here, say in here, stays in here when you leave here. There was a big sign we had in there. And as long as that happens, you keep your team within, which Ryan's done a heck of a job, you're going to deal with some of the individuality. That doesn't mean you have to like it. You have to coach them through it.
The other thing I might add, why this is a great place to go to school, it's a great place to live when you get out of school. You're going to get a great education, you're going to get a job. I mean, they're paying, Intel's in here now, you guys probably read about that, they're going to pay $165,000 a year. That's a lot of money. A lot of these high school coaches aren't making that kind of money, okay? Right? So anyway, it's a great place to go to school, great place to live when you get out of school. The other thing I might add, talking about captains, when I coach guys, spring ball's over, the kids went home. We didn't see them all summer. Now you got them all summer, right? The captain's out here working out with them. We couldn't go out there and coach them during the summer. I mean, that's all changed, so it's going to change. You might need to have more than 2 captains, for example. If it's changing, you better change.
All right, I got the next question. So we're at a high school clinic here, and so we want to talk a little ball. So, Coach Cooper, you were mostly on defense, right? Or were you offensive as well?
Defense.
You got 2 offensive guys. So, favorite play? Oh, yeah, he was definitely offensive. Favorite play? I guess you can go with the defense. And favorite drill in practice? Coach Cooper, we'll start with you.
Favorite play?
Yeah.
I have a pretty good left tackle. Orlando Pace. We ran the off tackle play a hell of a lot, to be honest with you. We had Corey Stringer right tackle now. I'm telling you, he was as good or better run blocker than Orlando Pace. People ask me all the time, hey coach, who's the best football player you ever coached? Best athlete you ever coached? Wow, that's tough. I had some pretty good ones, you know. Who's the best player you ever coached? Orlando Pace. It doesn't take me long to answer that. I mean, he won the Outland Lombardi sophomore and junior year, 3-time All-American, first player taken in the draft, All-Pro for about 9 years in a row. The name of the game is recruiting. The 3 things you got to do when you become a coach. I'm bouncing around here. 3 things you got to do to become a head coach. You got to recruit, and recruit. That team that's got the best players, guys, usually wins. That's why Ohio State usually wins. We got better players.
So off tackle, run play, we got that. Okay. How about favorite drill?
Favorite drill? I coach the defensive backs. Write this down, remember this now. What you see is what you coach. We never kept passes broken up. We never kept missed tackles. I ain't gonna give you credit for knocking the damn ball down. Make the interception. Make the interception. Almost every year I coach the secondary, my defense. Look it up. One year we had 25 interceptions. We only played 10 games. This past year, coach, I hate to bring it up. I think we had 6. Don't knock the damn thing down.
No, it's just asking about that drill, coach. That's all I want to know.
I don't even want my coaches saying, catch the ball, or make the tackle. Hell, everybody wants to catch the ball. Coaching is teaching them how to catch the football. You catch that ball with your thumbs together. That's the strongest part of your hand. You catch it out here as far as you can. So I drill for defensive back. I threw the ball. I'm going to throw it. Hartline does a fantastic job at with the wide receivers. He throws it. He throws it here. He throws it there. He throws it down here. And he throws it hard. But they got to catch it out here. You got to tuck it away. You got to put it away. The ball's thrown. It's thrown to you. Go make the interception. The team that makes the fewest mistakes usually wins the game. I'll shut up.
Coach Tress, what do you got?
I only had one play. Off tackle. So that was my favorite play. Now, it could have been the quarterback running off tackle as well. drill. I was thinking about that as Coach was expounding. And my favorite drill was when we took the corners and we flipped them to wide out. We took the wide outs and we had made them play corner to see if they could cover. And that's when we found Chris Gamble. And Chris Gamble maybe was as good at that position of anyone I've ever had, and ended up, finding someone. So the unusual drill that can maybe expose something, lots of drills you just need to repeat. Other drills you need to find something, expose something. And so I'm going to say reverse one-on-one.
Favorite play is in 2001, we were kind of on the cutting edge of the spread offense back when there really wasn't a spread, and Dan Mullen was my offense coordinator, and Josh Harris was our quarterback at Bowling Green, and we would move that table out of the way and stay. Our wives were still in Notre Dame where we were. We would sit there till 2 o'clock in the morning and just block each other, and there was no playbook. We developed it right there. Dan, myself, kind of Greg Brandon. And we wanted to do, was back when Purdue was running the basketball and grass. I grew up in the Big Ten country, so how do you run spread formations yet high formation football? We did it. We just started playing. So 12-13 was our favorite. It was basically a veer. It was a vertical double team downhill, and a guy like Zeke Elliott became Zeke Elliott because he put his foot in the ground and went 4 to 6, A to B as hard as he possibly could. In the offensive line, there was no flat steps. We were pushing people off the ball. So 12-13. Favorite drill, once again, comes into the Ohio in me, and that is we used to do the circle drill. We probably can't do that anymore. Yeah. And that was when you would get the entire team. And I used to do it in front of 95,000 at the spring game. We always finished with the quarterbacks. It was Cardell against JT, and you put them, a little bit right there. And the whole idea, people thought you're just running each other. You're not. It's hand-to-hand combat. Number one thing you do, you expose your toughness, or your toughness gets exposed. It's in front of your biggest, people you're worried about, not your peers. And I've seen, because football is all about confidence. You get in that circle and you win, you're a better player the next day of practice because you're just walking around a little different. That and goal line tackle are my two. You did that the other day. Ryan calls me the other day and he said,
compliance.
He said, we're going to goal line tackle. I said, ooh, you still allowed to do that? But those are the two favorite.
I love inside drill because there's limited on what we can do nowadays. So inside drill is definitely my favorite. And favorite play for me is 4 verticals. I find about 50 ways to throw 4 verticals, so that's it.
That's awesome. All right. This is a tough one, but I know a lot of people want to hear it. The most talented player you coached while you were at Ohio State?
The most talented player. Wow. You go. It might be Kirk Herbstreit.
Come on, you got to answer.
Joey Galloway wasn't bad. Joey was the fastest. Joey ran 4.18 right here for the pros. I ran it one time. That's it. I ain't running no more. And he's still talking about how fast. Now, I don't know. I'm not sure that was 40 yards. But you had Eddie George. Eddie George wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. He brought up Big O. I already talked about that left tackle. He's the best. He's the best football player. Yeah. Best alley's hard. I don't know if it was Terry Glenn. Robert Smith wasn't bad. Terry Glenn. Pretty good. Yeah.
Fernando Pace, man.
Sean Springs.
Sean Springs wasn't bad. Yeah. Coach Chris, you had a bunch.
But some of them are in here and they'll be disappointed. That question we get all the time, right? Whether you're on a radio podcast or whatever, and in this day and age, as Urban said, everyone hears everything. So I've never gone on record saying who my best player was. I've had a lot of good ones, and I'm not going to go on record tonight. So I'm going to pass it on to Urban.
What about most talented? Can you say that or no? You're not going to, you don't plead the fifth on that.
Most talented?
Yeah.
There would be an inference then that they weren't that good. So I'm not going there. You're not tricking me.
Yeah. Is that pleading the fifth?
Urban, I know you talked about some guys in the school.
Yeah, I'd say we had to run a defense. When you said that, I kind of started sweating, like, because some players would say, what the heck, coach, you know. But we had to run a defensive ends here about 6 years in a row that it started off with the Joey Bosa, and then all of a sudden, a kid named Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Sam Hubbard, Jalen Holmes, Tyquan Lewis. I mean, just monsters. You know, Nick Bosa didn't start, I think, but a handful of games here. And he might be, when you see the best combination of speed and strength that I've ever seen, it'd be hard to not say him. And then I'm going to get a phone call from Joey here in a minute. He's going to say, the other guy is Zeke Elliott. You know, the one thing I've never missed on, if that guy runs high hurdles, I took him. I went in that high school, and I think that's the 110s, I think it is. And when they ran, I just never missed. That started back at Colorado State years ago. I recruited a kid named Mondell Ramsey out of Colorado State. He was okay, but I watched him on track. I'm like, how does he do that? His hips, his explosiveness. And Zeke Elliott was a high hurdler.
Mike Tomczak was a good high hurdler.
Really? Just never missed on a guy like that. I think that's, if you watch a track coach go out and work a kid, work a player, a young player, I would always, as a young coach, I'd make a note in my notebook, waiting for laptops, and I'd go back and follow up on that kid, because you keep doing that with your hips, explosiveness. I just never missed on a high hurdler.
Well, Ted Ginn wasn't a bad high hurdler. And Brian Hartline was a good high hurdler. So those were my two best high hurdlers.
Are you allowed to partake?
Oh, no. I would say this. I agree with Coach. I mean, you know, I was fortunate enough to be around Nick Bosa and Chase Young and those guys. They're just so talented. Denzel Ward. I mean, those guys are just so talented. But I just think overall talent, just watching the ball skills of Garrett Wilson was like, he'd get bored in practice. I mean, I've never seen a guy like just catch a ball in midair and then just start like throwing it behind his back, or like he'd catch a ball and just like put it between his legs and then he'd like throw it to the manager who's like 50 yards over there. And what the hell just happened? And he was Rookie of the Year this year. He's going to be a really good pro.
How about for these guys, when you guys go in at halftime, I think everybody just assumes everybody knows what to do at halftime. How organized do you guys feel that, like for these guys, how, if you're going to give recommendations or how you did it, what's the key to halftime adjustments in your guys'
We always did it. Now, the defense went one part of the locker room, the offense went the other part. The defensive coordinator, coaches got together and talked about what happened in the first half, what we did good, what we need to improve on. The coordinator would take the rest of his coaches and go over what we talked about, get with your group, go out and play better in the second half.
I think halftime is the same thing as throughout the entire year you're working with your players. You want to know what they're thinking. You want to know what they've learned in that half. You want to know what they suggest. You want to be able to clarify what they should be looking at, doing, thinking. And so, really, it's no different. If you have a culture of interaction with you and your players that's every day in practice, every day when you're watching the film, every day when you're walking in the halls in the school, you know, every halftime's no different. You're just in a conversation about where we are.
I think the most undervalued, and I speak to a lot of high school coaches now, staffs that get asked to do it, and I always tell them that, you know, they want to spend all their time about their players. I usually spend time with their coaching staff. And I always, you know, how do you evaluate your coaches? We had some great teams here at Ohio State. You know why? I had great coaching staffs. Not good, elite coaches. What we didn't do as well, we didn't have the same type of staff. And the problem in college was every 2 years I'd lose a Ryan Day, I'd lose you know, our coordinators every 2 years went on to be head coach, and you'd be like, that's why I tried the co-coordinator thing, because I knew I was going to lose them. And when you lose, you talk about, if I have a great staff, what I do at halftime, I go get a drink of Gatorade, I talk to Mick about who's hurt, who's not, I look at Ryan and say, what do you think? I'll give my opinions, go over the defense. Hey Luke, Greg Schiano or Chris Ash, what are you thinking? Okay, good, I'll do a talk to the special teams guy and then go. If I have a bad staff, and I shouldn't say bad, if I have a staff that's struggling, I'm sick to my stomach, because you can't, you know, you got 10 minutes, man, that clock, you have Quinn in there yelling, all right, 8 minutes, you're like, shit, you know, I shouldn't say that, shoot. But if I have a great staff, we're good. We're good, right, we're good. Here's our series, our next 3 series, we're gonna go, boom, 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 boom. And then I'm worried about go talk to the players more than the coaches, because I trust my staff. You don't trust your staff, and we've all been there. Wow. I mean, that's when you're counting the ceiling fan at night, because you're not about the players. If you have a great staff, you're going to have a great team. Now, like Coop said, it depends on talent level. But if you have a great staff, you're probably going to maximize that team. And that's when I go speak to staffs most of the time, I say, tell me, and you know what the thing that's amazing, Kirk? When I say, how do you evaluate your staff, they kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? And then they'll tell me how bad their players are. I was like, wait a minute. That's something I learned from Woody Hayes and Earl Bruce, is don't ever say they're bad players. Maybe you got a bad staff that aren't getting the most out of your players. But don't start saying you got bad players. When I hear that, I'm like, you got a major problem. Not with a team, with your staff. Doesn't take much effort for a coach to come in that staff meeting and say, this guy sucks. First of all, that never happened here, you're fired. They fire coaches, but if you said that, you gotta go. Coach them.
I think he's going through this right now, still being relatively young as a head coach. Love to hear your guys talking about having this, just here listening to you. Anybody who's a head coach out here, maybe you already have a certain way you handle in-game communication. You know, you might be an offensive head coach. The defense is out there. I don't know what you're doing, but everybody has a different way of doing it. Some delegate, they just trust the defense coordinator. Like Chip Kelly, he's completely enamored with the offense, and his defensive guys like the head coach of the defense. What's your guys' philosophies on in-game communication? Whether you're an offensive guy, a defensive guy, your side of the ball is on the field, what do you suggest? Your side of the ball that you specialize in is on the sideline, and the other side's out there. How do you handle that for these coaches?
Well, you get with, if you need to, if you're playing real good, you're kicking butt, you don't need to do much, you know. Otherwise, you get your defense together as the head coach and the defensive coordinator and talking upstairs, what changes do we need to make? I thought Coach Tressel made a good job there a while ago to talk about what they did at halftime. But you can do the same thing on the field. You don't go to sleep during the timeout, for goodness sakes. You make corrections on the field.
Right. It's almost like Tress. It's like you're wearing an offensive hat throughout the week. You're dialed in, maybe not quite as dialed in on the defensive side. And so you're a head coach, but you're also involved in what's going on that side more than the other side. So I just wondered, things are going good, it's obvious. But how do you manage being an offensive coordinator and the head coach, where you're dealing with special teams and just deal with it all, you know, when it comes to communication on the headsets?
I wasn't involved with the defense at all. In fact, the defensive staff didn't even tell me where they met. So I wasn't involved. You know, I had great coaches. We had great defenses. Very seldom did you have that little flicker on your thing, and very seldom, say, hey, Dino, I might take a timeout, or, hey, Jim Haycock, or Luke Fickle, or, whomever. So I didn't even listen to what they were doing, because I wanted to listen to what our offensive coaches had heard from the players as the players were sitting on the sideline. I also wanted to manage the game and think out what situations might be arising. And one thing I learned from the NFL guys is that most games are decided in the last 4 minutes of the half in the game. And positioning yourselves for the half of the game. So I stayed away from the defense. Now, every once in a while, in week, I would talk to the defense about, hey, this is hurting us. How could we do better against it? Or, maybe you guys could think about using it. But Urban talked about giving people confidence. Giving players confidence is important, but giving your coaches confidence is important. I wanted that defensive staff to know that I believed in them.
Last 10 years, analytics started seeping into the game, and I was not a real big fan of it, but you have to have it. But I think hard character and injuries and fatigue, that overrules all analytics in my mind at the end of the game. But I would always try to have a Ryan Day or a Dan Mullen that was, away from the fray, because the press box is a much different scene than down on that field. And it's hard to make decisions down there, and so we would have a rule that in those situations there's only 2 people talking. Because the last thing you can do is, especially you're down in that moment of the game where it's decision time, you can't have a lot of chatter. So we were really good about that over there. And once again, the better guy I had up there, there was no problem. He said, we were having that conversation well before it happened. Same thing on defense. You have Luke Fickle that's been through the ranks, that conversation's been had. Now then there's other times where your mouth goes dry, that heart starts beating a little bit because you got to make that call on 4th down and 1 against the rivals. You put that's on one shoulder, and you got to make that call. Just do the best you can.
Think about all the great teams you guys have been a part of. What did they all have in common?
It's easy. Competitors. That's the number one character. Quality of, I'll argue this, I get arguments. Recruiting, 6 foot, what's his arm length? What's his arm length? Pat Elflein has short arms, and so did, Corey Lindsley. He's a high-paid center in the NFL. When the NFL told us he had 2 short arms, that guy would break you in half if he had a chance to do it because he's a competitor. The number one quality that every great player, great coach I've ever been around, it's not tall, big, strong, fast. That all helps. It's competitive. They refuse to lose. And if you got a team that refuses to lose, a coaching staff that refuses to lose, you probably won't lose.
I'd go, mine would probably be selflessness. Great players were the ones that it wasn't about them. I mean, the really great ones. One thing we all did in recruiting was you tried to learn as much as you could. Your number one person that you talked to was the high school coach. But you tried to bounce around everyone in the high school. Talk to the cafeteria worker, talk to the janitor, talk to whomever. But to really become the best you can be, it's got to be about us. It's the problem our country's having, right? I mean, this is a me generation. We're still competitive, we're still innovative, we're still brilliant, we're still rich, but we're not selfless. If you think about anything that's going wrong, whether it's murder rate is up or this is that or this is that, it's usually a selfish act, right? And so what I noticed, we had 9 teams play for a national championship. Those teams were selfless. It wasn't about them. We had more talented teams that didn't fare as well, that it became about them individually. And it's hard at this level. The agents and the NIL, and I don't hit me, because I'm going to get drafted and so forth. Or in high school, I'm a senior, and I don't want to get hurt and lose my scholarship opportunity. But if you find that competitive person, Will Smith, I'll never forget, it was a good one, that John brought here and ended up being a superstar. Well, he could have left his senior year, but his grandmother wanted him to graduate. But what made me believe in him more than anything is his junior year, we win the national championship. He stays for his senior year. We lose to the team up north. We're getting ready to play Kansas State in the bowl game. He comes into the meeting room. Now, he's going to get drafted in the first round, and Kansas State didn't fire you up after you played the Hurricanes for the championship. He stood in that team room right over there, and he said, I am not leaving here losing 2 games in a row at Ohio State. If I see anybody that doesn't prepare in this bowl game, and those selfless people and those selfless teams, to me, that's a societal thing as much as it is a football thing, and that's why what they do is so important, because you're turning out competitive, selfless people that need to run this country.
I agree with what the coaches have said. I might add one thing. You got to work hard. You got to be a competitor. You got to do what the coaches do. You got to take coaching. But you also got to recruit players, guys, that can play better than the coach. Don't take that wrong. About 80% of your team, good enough, don't lose a game. Somebody's got to win it. And usually it's your quarterback, it's your running back, it's your sound defense, it's your turnovers and things like that. But what you see is what you coach. I watch a lot, as I'm sure you guys do, watch football all week on TV, pros, college, whatever. Should never, defensive line coach ought to occasionally go over and make sure the defense is lining up on the side. You hate to see it get a stupid penalty where you line up across the line. You have too many people in the huddle. You're late getting the play in. Timeout. Save your timeouts. Save your timeouts and get you a good kicking game. That kicker is going to win you or lose you about 3 or 4 games a year. Get you a good kicker. And recruit. Go out in the hallway, get that good basketball player, and make a wide receiver out of it. And then defensive back can't cover a good basketball player. You got to throw the ball down with that spread offense I talked about.
They'll stop.
Yeah.
Hey, Tress, I'm curious, when you mentioned that selfless, what if you see a team that are conditioning in spring ball physically has the potential to be a championship team? We can see some signs in February, March, and April of it's not quite to the level that you think. Is that something you can address? Is that something you can coach? Or do you just hope that a team has that? How do you try to nurture having other than recruiting, how do you nurture it if you don't maybe have 2 or 3 of your alphas who aren't quite on the same page like you will say?
You know, I think we're all selfish. I mean, we're human. We all want what we want. And so I think it's something we have to discuss, at the kitchen table with our families. We have to discuss it in every classroom in the school. We have to discuss it certainly, and we had to discuss it with our guys. And it's even harder the more attention you get, because all of a sudden you feel it's about you. And so, like anything else that's difficult, you have to intentionally spend a lot of time to talk about it. And that still doesn't mean you're going to get it done, because society has tricked us into thinking it's about us and that we deserve this, and that, if we don't get it, it's not fair. So it's a battle that we have to somehow, some way address every day.
Well, I think we're about out of time. So Kirk,
We just got started.
no, these guys want to drink beer and talk ball here. So, sure, go ahead.
I think we gotta go drink beer.
I agree with that.
I'll say this because I've heard it recently. It's something I've grabbed onto, and I think we had Clint Bruce, who's a Navy SEAL, come in and speak to our team. He talked about balance, and as a football coach, you try to find balance in your life, but it's hard because the game of football it takes you away from your family, the time commitment. There's a lot that comes with being a football coach. It doesn't matter if you're in the NFL, college, high school, Pop Warner. And so when you think about balance as a football coach, you think it's an equal distribution of time. But that's not really what balance is. What I learned what balance is building high ground for hard times. And you do that through faith, family, and friends. So you can't spend the equal amount of time with your faith, family, and friends as you do with football, but you invest in that time when you can. So when those hard times come, you have your faith, family, and friends ready to go. And I think that's something that we've shared with our team recently that I really grabbed onto that I think really makes a lot of sense. So.
I would add, that's awesome. I've never heard that. I'm gonna use that. I might not even acknowledge it. But I would add to that those hard times, whether it was a tough loss or it was something personally that was devastating, or something career-wise that was devastating, usually those toughest times lead to more impactful times than you ever imagined. And I had an old mentor tell me after I left here that you're going to have more impact in your next chapter if you believe you will. And if you build that high ground, and if you believe you will impact, then you can handle those high. I need to give one commercial. Can I do that? Okay. I just finished Kirk Herbstreit's book, and if you haven't read it, there's so many of the things we talked about here tonight: work ethic, competitiveness, persistence, what it takes to be successful, going through hard times, personally or professionally, or the thing you love, your sport. Every one of your players and every one of your coaches should read his book. Out of the pocket, right? Out of the pocket. Because it really, everybody in your school should read it. Because that's something I think we've lost sight of, is just how difficult it is, how hard you have to work, how much persistence it takes, and that, you know what? All of us are hurting in some ways, and I really gained a lot from his book. So.
Well, Kirk, appreciate you spending time.
Yeah,
It means a lot. That means a lot.
How about having these four guys together on the same